Tig here again. In this video, I'll be describing 6 ways that educators can use GenAI chatbots to improve the quality of their teaching. We'll look at how you can write effective prompts to get GenAI to do what you want, and consider the applications of this technology in the context of lesson planning and content creation, and supporting students with assessment and understanding materials. We'll use GenAI to improve the inclusiveness of teaching and assessment before exploring how GenAI can be used for professional development and to improve student engagement. I hope any educators watching find this video a helpful resource for improving their practice. I hope the examples in this video will give you ideas and inspiration for how you can make GenAI work for you. You can request any of the prompts that I use through the email in the channel description, and can get in touch if you want any advice or help using GenAI to support your teaching or research. But before we get to that, if you haven't subscribed to this channel, I'd really appreciate it if you did so now. I endeavor to make this channel as useful and valuable a source of information and ideas on GenAI in higher education as possible for both students and educators. The channel is growing rapidly and now has over 400 subscribers. Please consider liking this video. It helps me out with the YouTube algorithm. And if you find this video or any of the other videos on this channel useful, share them with someone you think they could help. For instance, my recent video on how to approach marking and assessment you suspect may be AI generated, linked on screen now, which may be of interest. Now, on with the show. I thought I'd start off by showing you this figure from HFS research. And yeah, I know, it's not the most recent image that's been doing the rounds, but I think it does a great job of describing the typical journey that users of GenAI go on. It describes mine well. At the start, you're blown away by the amazing speed and seeming credibility of GenAI. You think it's a flawless technology. After some use, you notice that there are limitations and errors in the output you receive. There are some things it can't do well, or at all. Yeah, I guess that makes sense. It is a trained language model that can only produce statistically probable words in a likely sequence, based on the context specified by your prompt. You start to lose your faith. However, you think about all the amazing things that it can do and how it can support your work if used appropriately and effectively. Your confidence increases in GenAI, understanding now that it is just a tool and that it can make mistakes. I know you wouldn't think it from this channel, but I would regard myself as quite skeptical of GenAI chatbots. They are a great technology and they are changing the world, but they're nothing without being fed carefully written and precise instructions. And their output is worthless without being carefully checked and improved or personalized. While ChatGPT is definitely the most popular GenAI chatbot and is used most frequently by educators and students, please know there are many alternatives available. While ChatGPT is a good all-rounder, they all have specific strengths or unique selling points. Perplexity supposedly cites sources. Have you used it for research? It's quite good. I'd say the sources are mostly real and mostly credible. Pi claims to be emotionally intelligent. They say their chatbot can be more relevant or comforting to users than their competitors' offerings. Writer claim that they produce writing that sounds human. There are loads of settings that you can use to make sure the output meets whatever specifications you have in mind. My favorite is Claude. I just think it's a brilliant chatbot. I'm not alone in my praise and regard for Claude. From what I can tell, it's generally regarded as the best option at the time of recording. The good part about Claude is that the free version is the same as the premium version. They use the same model. You're just more limited in the number of requests you can make, size of files you can upload, or functionality that's offered. If you're a ChatGPT user, give Claude a go. You may have a new favorite chatbot. Now we've chosen a GenAI chatbot, we need to tell it what to do. The instructions that we give to a chatbot are called a prompt, and there is good evidence that structuring or organizing organizing the prompt well will produce the best possible output. There are numerous frameworks for supporting the writing of prompts. On screen, you can see the CARE framework. This is an acronym for context, ask, rules, and examples. The prompt framework says we need to specify the identity or persona or the style in which we want our output written and provide clear instructions in a number of areas. Risen is similar and provides guidelines for the users of chatbots and how to organize their instructions. And there are hundreds of variations of these frameworks that are more or less a remix of the same thing. The framework that I find works well for organizing my prompts is PrEP. This is recommended by Fitzpatrick et al. In their 2023 book. They suggest that first a prompt should specify the purpose of the instructions, like, I want you to write a, then specify the desired role or voice of the output. I am a distinguished professor with 30 years of experience in... Or, I am an undergraduate who has just started studying... whatever topic. After this, explicit instructions are provided. You tell the GenAI exactly what you want and can include details of what you don't want too. It is important to be precise and eliminate ambiguity to the greatest extent possible. For parameters, you specify the desired word count. If you don't put a limit on the number of words you want, GenAI could rattle off a long, rambling essay. You could say, answer in no more than one sentence. You could say, give me the answer in bullet points. Here you can also specify the level of formality or style of the English used. GenAI will write in US English unless otherwise requested. You could say answer in UK English unless you want recognize with a Z or organize with a Z. The second part of the PrEP edit framework relates to what you do with your output. First, you check whether it adhered to the instructions you gave it. Is the length and style what was specified? Next, you have to determine the accuracy of the output. There are no shortcuts here, and you have to manually check whether all the claims and statements that the GenAI makes are correct, and, if supported with a citation, that the source is real and is being used appropriately. Some users say this step is so onerous, you'd be quicker writing an essay yourself. Are there any obvious or implicit biases in the writing? Is it leading? What do you think about the tone? In the final step, represented by T in edit, is transforming the output into something that is useful and usable for you. Here, you add citations, personalize the writing, or adapt the output for whatever purpose you created it. I mentioned that there are numerous frameworks to support prompt writing, and even this one has been extended, expanding from PrEP Edit to Prepare Edit. The ARE expansion of PrEP includes getting the GenAI to ask follow-up questions to refine the output, asking the GenAI to rate or critique its response, and the E stands for appeal to the GenAI's emotions. What the heck? Yes, this is an odd one, but there is some evidence that if you include something like, I want you to write this as convincingly as possible, it means a lot to me. You will get an improved output. Yeah, I know, it's odd. Try it and see if you notice a difference. Now, let's start looking at ways that GenAI can improve our teaching. The first way we're going to consider is lesson planning and content creation. Here you can use GenAI to help with lesson plans for lectures and seminars. Ask it to provide examples for case studies relating to complex concepts, or create a reading list of recommended texts. You probably guessed that the one highlighted in yellow is the one that I'm going to demonstrate in this video. We spoke a little about prompt writing. In essence, there are two primary approaches to writing prompts. The one-shot prompt, where you include everything that you want from the GenAI in a single instruction, and the multi-shot prompt, where you're setting yourself up for a conversation with the GenAI, knowing that there will be a bit of back and forth before you get what you want. I've got examples of both styles of prompt on screen now. Let's try the multi-shot approach with Claude. I'm saying that I am a lecturer that would like your help to design a lesson plan for a lecture and seminar that teaches undergraduate students the basics of research philosophy. Ask me as many questions as you need in order to help me develop these lesson plans, please. Claude is asking me some questions like, what is the overall goal or learning objectives for this lecture and seminar? What do you want students to take away? How long will the lecture and seminar be? Is it part of a larger course or a standalone session? What is the typical background and level of familiarity with research philosophy that your undergraduate students have? Are they new to the topic or have some prior exposure? The more detailed and comprehensive our responses are, the more useful the output will be. I would recommend not taking shortcuts if you are doing this. I'm not taking any shortcuts here. For the first question, I'm saying that I use the term paradigm instead of philosophy in the module. The module is based on the Collis and Hussey Research Methods textbook, that it will only focus on positivism, interpretivism, and pragmatism. I want students to understand when the different research paradigms are appropriate and when they are not appropriate, and why, and be able to link this with their final year research project. I specify the length of the lecture and seminar and tell the GenAI about the programs that the students are studying. I make it clear that this is introductory level stuff and the students will have no familiarity with the concept of research philosophy. I specify that I only want to cover the basics of ontology and epistemology, and the module only considers 3 paradigms: positivism, interpretivism, and pragmatism. I say I would like the lecture to be instructor-led, but the seminar should contain activities and exercises that will allow students to apply lecture materials. I say that Claude can decide what activities will be a part of the seminar, and it can involve small group discussions or anything else that it suggests. I describe the number of students who will be attending the lecture and seminar and what kind of rooms they will take place in, commenting on the layout and equipment. Finally, I describe how the lecture and seminar relate to the final assessment for the module. I conclude with an appeal to the emotions of the GenAI. Thank you. Please do a good job with this plan. I want the module to be successful and enjoyable and interesting for students. Again, this is based on the recommendation by AIpioneers.org. It's a strange anomaly, but let's roll with it. The only thing we care about is getting the best output possible. And the output is very good and useful. We've got a nice breakdown of the lesson plan for the lecture, and it's organized very well. I love this plan for the seminar. Students work together in groups to choose an appropriate paradigm for some research scenario. The groups then make presentations about which they selected and why. Dang, Claude has been really helpful here. Maybe you can think of some way to adapt this approach to your own module. Now we're going to take a break from Chatbots and look at how the AI functionality in Blackboard can help us check students' understanding of materials. That's right. GenAI is being added to many of the pieces of software we use every day, and Blackboard is no exception. Here I am, logged into the real-life Blackboard for my Research Methods module. As we're using GenAI to create a quiz to test students' understanding of research paradigms, it seems appropriate that we put this in the assessment folder. We click Create, and then scroll down to Test. We can call it whatever we like. If we were really using this quiz, we'd make sure that it was visible to students and decide whether any percentage of their overall mark would be linked to it. In this example, we don't really care. By clicking this little purple plus here, we have the option to create questions. And there are loads of options. The only one that we care about is auto-generate question, as this uses the GenAI functionality in Blackboard. We've got 2 options for creating a quiz. The first is that we describe to the GenAI feature exactly what kind of questions we want to ask students. But, and I'm speaking from experience, this doesn't produce the best quizzes. They're far too broad and don't really get to what you want students to understand from your own teaching. Instead, I recommend have the Blackboard GenAI build the questions based on your own teaching materials. For this, you click Select Course Items, go to the folder where the materials you want to test students' understanding of are saved, and click them. You're then presented with a number of options about the quiz. What kind of questions do you want it to have? Essay, matching, true or false, and fill in the blank. There are so many great options here, I can't decide, and select Inspire Me, which randomizes question types. Determining the complexity of the questions allows you to match their difficulty to the characteristics of the students that you're teaching. Got a bunch of hardworking geniuses? Turn the complexity up to the max. Got a cohort who are struggling with module materials? We can dial it back. How many questions do we want? We can choose between 1 and 10, and then we click Generate to get the Blackboard GenAI to create our quiz. When it's done, we can see what the questions based on our teaching materials are. We check these questions to make sure they are what we're looking for and that the correct answer really is the correct answer. You click the square to the left of the question number if you want to include it in the version you make available to students. Most of these seem pretty good, except for question 7. I don't want students to have to write an essay. I want this to be a quick and hopefully fun way that they can test their understanding of this week's lecture. When we've decided which questions we want to include, click Add to Assessment, and our new quiz is ready and available to students. Wow, that was fast. Creating a quiz like this would have taken me hours in the days before GenAI. Can you think about how you might apply this to your module? Next, let's look at how we can use GenAI to better support students. There are a variety of ways that we can achieve this. We could develop frequently asked questions for our module handbooks or virtual learning environments. We could create a revision guide or study materials, or we could design email templates for common student queries. Obviously, my list here is not exhaustive and just provides a few examples. But you probably guessed it. The one that I'm going to demonstrate in this video is using GenAI to help explain complex topics to students in simpler terms. To write a prompt to help us with this, we've got two options. The multi-shot approach, where we get the GenAI to ask us questions, and the one-shot approach. Let's go for the one-shot approach this time. In this prompt, I'm going to say that I want help explaining the basics of research philosophy to undergraduate students. I specify that I use the term paradigm in the module and want the GenAI to use this term. I say who I am, a senior lecturer, and that my students are second-year undergraduates studying business and entrepreneurship and international business management. This will help the GenAI pitch the explanation at an appropriate level. The instructions are that this should be appropriate for second-year undergraduates and only consider positivism and interpretivism. I want to be able to explain what research paradigms are, why they are important, what positivism and interpretivism are, the types of research that they may be appropriate for, and provide some examples for how students might be able to apply these paradigms to an undergraduate research project or dissertation. And I want my answer in UK English. I'm going to use Claude again for this one. You've probably spotted in the prompts that I'm using in this video that I say please. There is some evidence that being polite to a GenAI can help with the quality of responses, and saying thank you can reinforce desired answers. This Medium article describes the anomaly. The output is okay. I mean, it does help simplify the two major extremes of research philosophy and provide some relevant examples for students, but I know it could be better. Even though this was supposed to be a one-shot approach, never hesitate to keep prompting a GenAI until you get what you want. I'm going to ask the GenAI to try and simplify the explanation of this complex concept further. I say it is students' first time encountering the notion of research philosophy, and it could use an analogy to help students understand. And wow, this time the output is so much more helpful and useful. It says a research paradigm is like a pair of glasses that change how you see and understand the world. Positivism is counting glasses and appropriate for clear numbers and facts. The example it uses is a coffee shop and says that the counting glasses would be appropriate for knowing how many customers buy your product, does marketing increase sales, and the relationship between price and sales. It explains that interpretivism is understanding glasses that you can put on to understand how people feel and why they do things. For instance, why do customers choose your coffee shop? Or what makes customers loyal to you? I love the simplicity of the idea that research paradigms are lenses through which we view and make sense of the world. The output makes it very clear that if you want to know how many, or how much the positivism glosses are appropriate. If you want to know why or how, you need to put on the interpretivism glosses. There are loads of great and relatable examples included in the output that will help students to understand research paradigms and will be so useful to include in my teaching. Thanks, Claude. Are there any complex ideas in your module that you could use GenAI to help simplify for students? Next, we're going to use GenAI to help us with inclusive teaching. Some examples where it may be of use are listed on screen now. These include creating diverse examples for our teaching, ensuring that language in teaching materials is inclusive, and proposing strategies for how we can engage all of our students, considering how they learn best. However, you probably guessed correctly that the option I'm going to illustrate in this video is suggesting ways that we can make materials more accessible. Let's think about teaching materials. First of all, I plan to attach some lecture slides to ChatGPT for this. From my experience, ChatGPT is better at reading PowerPoint slides. We're going to use a one-shot prompt approach. I say I would like help to make the attached lecture slides more accessible for students. I explain who I am and who the students are. I ask ChatGPT to read the attached and provide comments and suggestions that could improve the readability or accessibility of these lecture slides. I ask for an answer in UK English and in bullet points. And it gives us some great feedback on the slides. It gives us some examples for where we can make the language on the slides more comprehensible to students, suggests improvements to the readability by increasing font size, making it minimum 24, and breaking up long sentences into bullet points. Guilty as charged here. I could definitely increase the font size in places, and I do have several long blocks of text in the lecture. It tells me visual aids and examples could improve the slides and make suggestions about where they could be deployed. This is brilliant. It's talking about adding a uniformity to the structure and composition of slides and limiting the amount of text or bullet points. It's suggesting that I could consider cultural differences and how I use language, and includes some suggestions to improve the formatting and organization of the slides and interactivity of my lectures. This is great and has brought some really valuable changes to my attention for the next time my module runs. That's the inclusivity of teaching materials. In this video, I also want to share with you a longer and more comprehensive prompt I wrote to improve the inclusivity and accessibility of assessment materials. This asks GenAI to rewrite an attached assessment brief so that it can be read and comprehended by all students, including those with literacy issues or hidden disabilities. I say that the assessment brief should be written in the style of a caring lecturer who wants to simplify an assessment brief containing the instructions for an assignment as much as possible to ensure it can be understood by all students. I instruct the GenAI that it should do this through clear and concise language and avoiding unnecessary jargon and idiomatic expressions that can confuse non-native speakers or students with specific learning disabilities. I ask the GenAI to clearly state what is expected of students, how tasks should be completed, and the criteria for assessment. I wanted to remove ambiguity, which can be particularly challenging for students with autism spectrum disorders or anxiety disorders. I ask GenAI to organize content with headings, subheadings, bullet points, and numbered lists to make the assessment brief easy to navigate. To use accessible fonts and appropriate font sizes, at least 12 point, to ensure readability. The content and examples used in the assessment should be culturally diverse and inclusive, reflecting a range of experiences and backgrounds. Language should be gender neutral, and the whole thing should be written as clearly and concisely as possible in UK English. I'm using Claude for this, and what a response we get. Look at this beautiful and simplified reworking of my assessment brief. Claude gives us steps involved in developing the assessment, makes it very clear how we will earn marks, gives us some important notes or things to be aware of, and provides some options if we need help. Have you gotten a critical appraisal of your teaching or assessment materials from a GenAI yet? This has certainly given me a lot to think about. Now, we're going to think about how we can use GenAI to help with our professional development. Some ideas are suggested on screen, like help generating learning outcomes for new modules or programs, ideas for personal statements for teaching award applications, or portfolio entries. All very interesting, but the option I'm going to demonstrate in this video is suggestions for how we can improve our teaching based on module evaluations. Now, I don't want to brag, but my module performed better than the average for the department, faculty, and university for 8 out of 10 questions. Not bad, but how could I make it even better for the next time it runs? To do this, I'm going to use Claude and a one-shot prompt. I say that I want Claude to read the attached end-of-module survey feedback and propose ways that I can improve the module for the next time it runs. I clarify that this is a module for second-year undergraduates and that I want to respond to their feedback and keep the module as relevant and interesting as possible. Claude provides themes from the feedback that I can consider with regard to improving the module. The students want to make sure that the module isn't so dissertation focused, and means I should be giving attention to other research focused final year modules like management inquiry. I could also show how they could apply the research skills they learn in their student enterprises or if they're working for a small business in the future. Great idea. I teach GenAI use to students in the module. They want more examples of how it can be used beyond their studies and in the context of their student enterprises. Noted. They felt that assessment information could be clearer. Good input. Funny you should mention that. I've got a simplified version of the assessment brief that I'd love to try out. Claude also flags the areas where my module is performing well and calls them strengths to maintain. Thanks for the morale boost. It gives me an option to expand on the recommendations and provide more precise suggestions for their implementation. Wow, and it's more good stuff that takes the students' feedback and proposes meaningful ways of reworking the module to respond to it. I love it! This is such helpful stuff. Have you asked GenAI for suggestions as to how you could improve your teaching? Who knows what you might learn? This has given me a lot of food for thought. The final way that we're going to use GenAI to improve our teaching is improving student engagement. There are a variety of ways that we can use GenAI for this, and some suggestions are listed on screen. Icebreaker activities for the first class, interactive elements you can include in lectures, or ideas for group projects or group presentations. These are all excellent ways that GenAI could help us. However, you probably guessed it, I'm going to demonstrate the one highlighted in yellow. Please note that the value of GenAI as a tool to support and enhance your teaching is limited only by your imagination. The examples and ideas in this video have the purpose of drawing your attention to ways that you can use GenAI and are far from exhaustive. Think of this video simply as ideas and inspiration. If there's some really obvious and exciting way that you can use GenAI that you think I missed, let me know in a comment. If there's something that you'd like to see, let me know in a comment. If you've had some success using GenAI to improve your teaching, I'd love to hear about it. Anyway, the option highlighted in yellow is generating discussion prompts for seminars or discussion boards. We've already covered the seminar part, so let's think about what students could debate or chat about relating to module materials on the discussion board. For this, we're going to use Claude again, and let's do a multi-shot prompt. I'm saying to Claude that I'd like some ideas for topics that students can chat about or debate on the module's discussion board. I say that I'm a senior lecturer and that the students are second-year undergraduates, specifying the programs that they are studying. I say that I want answers in UK English and instruct the GenAI to ask me as many questions as it needs to generate some good discussion topics. Claude wants to know, how long have students been studying research paradigms and what level of knowledge do they have? Are students interested in any businesses or sectors in particular? What is the purpose of the discussions? And it provides some examples. Is this for groups or individuals? How long are discussion boards active? Is this voluntary? And what has generated some engagement previously? Again, you cannot take shortcuts responding to a GenAI's questions. The more you input, the higher the quality of the output. I take the time to answer the questions, commenting on the students' interest in raves and rave clothing, TikTok, that they have student enterprises they are building, that this is an individual activity, that discussion boards are only active for a week, and that it is voluntary and not connected with their final mark. Now, due to some limitations with how I've prompted the GenAI, it seems to think that my whole module is about research paradigms, instead of them just being the primary focus for a single week. As a result, it gives me 5 weeks of discussion board topics relating to research paradigms. Which paradigm would you use to understand TikTok shop sellers' success? Which paradigm is most appropriate for research into rave culture? We've got one discussion topic relating to the use of GenAI, which is also taught in the module. We've got one about social media marketing and understanding its success, and one about why some student enterprises succeed while others fail. Knowing my students well, they would love these topics, and I know if I were to use them, there would be contentious debate between them that involves the application of module materials. Thanks a lot, Claude. Your help with this has been brilliant. Have you used GenAI to help you develop discussion topics for your students? Here we are at the end of the video. If you made it this far, thank you for your time and attention. Please like, share, and subscribe. If you want any of the prompts that I used in this video, get in touch. I'll share them gladly. There's an email address in the channel description. Also happy to continue the conversation about how we can use GenAI to improve our teaching in the comments or through email. Bye!